Dan and Amy. Amy, today the governor delivers his State of the State address. The state of Illinois it's the worst governed state in America. And the problem he has is he is willing to deal, but he's only willing to deal on some of the things Democrat legislative leaders want if they're willing to deal on some of the structural reforms that Governor Rauner wants, and they haven't been willing to deal on those structural reforms, his titled turnaround agenda, to this point. So what will he say today? Will it be a bit of a throwdown on legislative leaders, or will it be more conciliatory with Rauner trying to point to areas where bipartisan compromise has been reached, where deals have been cut, and opportunities to do more of that sort of deal making?
What kind of tone do you want him to take, Dan?
I want him to challenge Mike Madigan and John Cullerton to a street fight in front of the Capitol.
Of course.
With
weapons or without?
Either way. In a cage, 3 men enter, 1 man leave.
And may it be the tallest man.
There you go.
Governor Ron.
Well, he's taller than the other 2 of them combined.
Stop it.
All right, Charles Thomas. He's our friend from ABC7,
Charles.
Political reporter for ABC7 News. Charles Thomas joins us now live from Springfield. Charles, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. We're a lot of people anticipating this speech today. You know, I've never heard so much pre-speech spin associated with a State of the State speech. The governor's office, late yesterday afternoon, began its pre-spin, giving us a sense of telling us how we should listen to this speech, and that we should hear the conciliatory moments, and that we should hear the accomplishments of this administration over the past year. Whereas the other side is putting everything on the governor. They say the reason that there is no budget in the state, the reason that social services programs are not being funded in the state, is solely the responsibility of the governor's office. And you and I both know that is not the case, that the other side is as culpable. Well, both sides are culpable here. And so we have to cut through the pre-spin and actually listen to what the governor says today.
But there are a couple of points where the governor can legitimately highlight compromise, right? Agreement. Even this week, John Cullerton agreeing that the governor and the Senate president do have an agreement about the broad outlines of public sector pension reform. Now, Mike Madigan hasn't spoken on the topic yet, but the Senate president, Democrat, and the governor do seem to have an agreement there, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we'll have to see that really happen. I mean, maybe that is a ploy to sort of take some of the starch out of the speech itself, because I mean, the governor knew State of the State was coming up today, so he had to do something to try to basically to create some kind of accomplishment. So he comes up with this deal. When was it? Late last week when he started, and then by Monday or Tuesday, it was Monday. They started saying, "Well, we've got the broad framework of a deal on pensions." And it's not a very good deal, quite frankly. I mean, it only saves $1 billion a year, and it certainly doesn't address the long-term pension debt. In fact, there are those out there who are saying that we'll be right back, that it won't stop the pension debt from actually going up.
No, that's
in the short term.
Yeah, I'm one of those, so I agree. Well, but I mean, it's what you can get done when you have intransigent legislative leaders, I would suggest. And but I mean, it's to me, there are opportunities for Governor Rauner to say, look, they have a worldview, I have a worldview. It's very different. I'm trying to find common ground here. We did on pensions. It's not as far as I want to go or the state needs to go, but at least it's a baby step. And the same thing can be said even with respect to public sector unions and contracts. I came to a deal with the Teamsters. We have disagreements, but we came to a deal with them recognizing the state's financial condition, and AFSCME won't. And he can kind of highlight the differences where he has been able to work with people who don't necessarily agree with him. But then there are people that are so dug in, that are so entitled, that they're impenetrable to reason or math.
Well, I mean, I think you can say that he's done that on several other fronts, where he's come halfway. At least he's taken some of his ideas off the table, as he puts it, in order to make an overture to the other side. I mean, I think that Speaker Madigan and his insistence that some of the governor's ideas violate Democratic Party principles, that where he won't even consider them or even dissecting them, so to speak, that probably is more of a problem for these negotiations even getting started.
Charles,
Because he just won't budge on those so-called Democratic Party principles.
I'd love to know what those are.
yeah. Well, let's talk about Mike Madigan, because as a reporter, and you're a seasoned reporter, an excellent reporter, I've loved you for decades now.
Oh, I love you too.
I know.
All right, enough. Break it up,
Love
you
it.
two.
And I miss you. And I don't know how to quit you. Now, how difficult is it to get an interview with Mike Madigan?
You know, I got one last year. It was the strangest thing. I was the only television reporter in Springfield that day.
Uh-huh.
And Steve Brown, who is Madigan's spokesman / pitbull, he
Security
comes up
guard.
and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well," and I said jokingly, "Well, I'm here for my one-on-one with the speaker." And he says, "Sure, come on over and let's talk." So I got in the wizard behind the curtain, and we sat there and we talked about what was going on in Springfield. So, you know, I haven't really had that kind of problem. And if I see him in the hall, he'll stop.
Yeah, but is
He'll
he
stop.
stubborn? I
There'll be
mean, what's he like?
He's efficient. Is that the word? He's a
Well-
very small. You know, he's a very small guy, like Cullerton,
Yeah.
like Rahm. What do you call him? What'd you call him, Dan?
Shetland people, Cornish people.
Shetland people, Cornish people.
They are. Well, they're-
He's
Ankle
he's a very
biters.
small guy. I mean, Mike
Yeah.
Madigan might be 145 pounds soaking wet, right?
Wow.
But he's got all this power that, and when he walks through, you can see the other reps kind of like giving him that bow.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
You know, the other Democrats, and you just he despite his small stature, he emanates power and knowledge. I mean, the guy knows everything
Yeah.
about everything that's going on there.
Well, that's right. Those two licentious leprechauns, Cullerton and Madigan, who've been there for almost 80 years between the two of them. It's fascinating. They have all this power and so forth. How's that been going for the state? I mean, he's the longest-serving state house speaker in the history of our country. And what's happened to Illinois over the last 30 years, where both sides agree that he is the most powerful politician in the state? I mean, when we talk about there's culpability on both sides, of course the governor's always responsible for what happens during his term. But where is the accountability for Mike Madigan in particular and John Cullerton as well?
No, I mean, I don't. Well, Madigan in particular. I mean, Cullerton's only been about 8 years now or so. But Madigan, that's a question that really is not asked enough at news conferences when he does have an availability, and he's had frequent availabilities since last summer. Mike Madigan's been out there. He'll do a news conference every time his chamber comes back, and they came back frequently over the summer to do nothing, but they came back, and he would always have an availability. And a lot of the press down here, the ones that cover the State House all the time, to them, the fact that he's been here 40 years and basically the state's gone into a ditch during that period, they don't ask that anymore because they're so familiar and they think they know the answer, so they don't ask it anymore. They don't ask a lot of questions down here that we in Chicago would ask if we had the same opportunity. But Mike Madigan doesn't do news conferences in Chicago. In fact, when he's back in the district up on the southwest side, we can't find the guy. We never know where he is.
Yeah, I remember you doing a piece that he doesn't own a cell phone, correct?
Right. Well, that's Chuck Gowdy did that
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
It was a great piece. It was a classic.
It's a face-to-face
chasing
business
him.
like The Sopranos, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, Charles, you know, from the legislators you talk to, the policymakers down there, how do you see this once the speech is given and then they go back to trying to hammer something out? Do you?
Okay, there's going to be a really interesting press conference down here at 3:00. At least I've gotten an advisory.
Okay.
Ken Duncan, the runaway rep.
Right.
The guy, the African American representative who ran off the plantation, so to speak,
Wow.
to side with the governor on a couple of key issues. In other words, he destroyed Mike Madigan's supermajority. He's the 71st vote that Madigan can't get
Right.
to override the governor. He's going to have a news conference at 3 o'clock this afternoon
Juicy.
after the speech. Now, keep in mind that Duncan is in a position where he could say, well, look, I'll be the supermajority if you do this.
Ooh.
He has some serious chops right now, and I'm interested to see how he's going to use those chops. Now, he scheduled this news conference, so obviously he has something he wants to say. So let's listen. I think that might be a key moment, because if he'll be the supermajority on certain issues, then why wouldn't then the speaker be moved to call certain bills on which he could override the governor?
Right. Maybe Duncan's going to announce he's coming over to the Republican Party.
Whoa!
Hey now.
How about
Hey now.
that? Now
That's
that would
crazy.
be an announcement.
You know, I don't think so.
cool.
I don't.
Yeah.
That would be a huge announcement. No,
No,
he
I
is
don't think
running.
so either.
He is running for re-election
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Democratic primary, and the speaker, through certain unions, has put up a candidate against Duncan.
Right.
Of course he is.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But I'm very interested in that news conference to find out what he has to say and whether or not he'll, on certain issues, go back and be part of the supermajority.
Well, we'll be watching you tonight. What time are your
Yeah.
reports?
I'll probably be on between. Well, I don't know. That's above my pay grade, but I'm at like between 4 and 6. We'll be coming back and forth between the State House and Chicago.
All right. Charles Thomas, ABC7 Chicago political reporter. Charles, thanks always for joining us.
I'm going to go to my happy place when he's telling this